A 5'2" supply clerk, banned from combat, lay bleeding from 4 bullet wounds. In her arms were 2 unconscious Navy SEALs, each double her weight. In her hand, a radio. She was calling in artillery on her own position. This is the story of Specialist Kira Vulkov, and what happened in the next 47 minutes would force the Pentagon to rewrite everything it believed about who belongs in combat. This is a true human triumph. Kira was a 24-year-old soldier denied combat roles 11 times for being physically unsuitable, yet she was a quiet force. The morning had started like any other in the weapons depot. Kira, a meticulous supply clerk, went through her daily routine, her fingers tracing familiar patterns on rifle stocks. She could hear the confident voice of Chief Resnik from the SEAL Team 3 briefing next door. His mission? High-value, target, extraction, Sector 7. Kira's jaw tightened. From her hidden workstation, she had analyzed 3 years of Taliban ambush data. Her predictive analysis software, the same kind used by intelligence agencies, flagged Sector 7 with a 73% probability of ambush. But who would listen to her? Just a supply clerk. Chief Resnik, a 6'4" SEAL commander, entered the supply room with a familiar, dismissive swagger. He needed ammo, and he needed it now. When Kira tried to warn him about Sector 7, he cut her off with a laugh that held no humor. "Keep counting bullets, Vulkov," he said. "Leave the fighting to real warriors." The SEALs laughed as they loaded up. They were good men, but they lived in a world where a 5'2" Russian-accented supply clerk didn't belong on a battlefield. Kira returned to her workstation, staring at the ambush probabilities on her screen. 3 years of studying every Taliban attack. 3 years of identifying patterns everyone else missed. 3 years of being told her analysis was interesting, but unnecessary. She saved the file and went back to counting bullets, the weight of her unspoken warnings heavy in her chest. A quiet preparation. The day dragged on with its usual rhythm, but Kira's mind kept returning to Sector 7. She knew the pattern. A disabled vehicle blocking the road, RPG teams on the ridges, machine gun nests in the abandoned buildings. She pulled up satellite imagery, cross-referencing recent drone footage, fresh tire tracks, disturbed earth, classic signs of an ambush. Her finger hovered over the secure phone. One call could prevent a disaster, but she'd tried before. "Stick to your lane, Specialist," a major had told her. Sergeant Briggs, a decent guy who treated her with respect, noticed her expression. "You look worried, Vulkov," he said. "SEAL Team 3 took the Sector 7 route," she said quietly. "They're SEALs. They can handle anything," he replied, but then saw the urgency in her eyes. "Sector 7 is a death trap," she explained, her accent thickening with frustration. She showed him the patterns on her screen. "I report 11 times. They tell me intelligence analysis isn't my job. But I see patterns. It is like chess. Once you know the opponent's favorite opening, you can predict the endgame." Briggs left, and Kira returned to her work, but her hands kept pausing. She calculated angles and distances. The nearest artillery battery was 8 clicks away, close enough for danger close if someone could provide accurate coordinates. If someone who had memorized every elevation and grid point in Sector 7 was there to call it in. When the radio exploded. At 16:32, the radio traffic exploded. "Contact! Contact! SEAL Team 3 is taking heavy fire. Sector 7. Kira's blood turned to ice. The grid coordinates were exactly where she'd predicted. The operations center erupted into chaos. A quick reaction force was 25 minutes out. Medevac helicopters couldn't fly into a hot landing zone. Only artillery could provide suppression, but someone needed eyes on target. "Base, this is Resnik," the chief's voice cut through the chatter. "We're trapped in the compound. Rodriguez is bleeding out. Kowalski's not responding." Kira stood up so fast, her chair crashed backward. Without conscious thought, her hands grabbed her tactical vest, the one she'd been issued but never authorized to wear. Body armor, check. Med kit, check. Radio with artillery frequencies, check. "Where the hell are you going?" Specialist Davis from the next cage asked. "To do my job," Kira replied. She sprinted across the base toward the motor pool. Sergeant Briggs appeared, blocking her path. "Vulkov, what are you doing?" "You're not authorized." "Neither is letting Americans die 3 clicks away," she shot back, her accent sharp with determination. Kira vaulted into the driver's seat of an up-armored Humvee. Her fingers found the ignition wires under the steering column, a skill she'd learned long ago in Moscow before she traded one uniform for another. The engine roared to life. "This is insane! You're a supply clerk!" Briggs shouted, grabbing the door. "No!" she said, slamming the vehicle into drive. "I am soldier, and soldiers do not let comrades die." The Humvee lurched forward. By the time they organized a response to stop her, she'd be at Sector 7 or dead. The art of war. The 3-kilometer route to the ambush site was a maze of crumbling roads. Kira pushed the Humvee to its limit, her mind calculating angles and timing. She had maybe 30 seconds between being spotted and taking fire. "Base, this is Resnik. They're massing for another assault. We're down to 3 effectives." Kira keyed her radio to the artillery frequency she had memorized months ago. "Steel rain, steel rain. This is Amirmai Azay frame element approaching Sector 7. Standing by for fire mission. Last calling station, identify yourself." A confused voice replied. "You're not on our authorized FO list." She ignored him, flooring the accelerator. A rocket-propelled grenade streaked past her windshield. Another impacted short, showering the Humvee with dirt. They had seen her. "Blue on blue! Check fire! Check fire!" A voice called over the radio. "It's Vulkov! The supply clerk took a Humvee!" "What?" Resnik's disbelief was palpable. Kira crashed through the compound wall in a shower of brick and dust. Taliban fighters scattered, momentarily confused. She slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop near the SEAL's position. The scene was worse than she'd imagined. Rodriguez was bleeding out. Kowalski was unconscious. Resnik crouched behind inadequate cover. "Vulkov, what the hell?" he shouted. She was already moving, an IFOC in her hand, sliding to Rodriguez's side. The tourniquet went on fast, her hands steady despite the rounds cracking overhead. She'd practiced this 1,000 times in her quarters. "You shouldn't be here," Resnik shouted. "Neither should you," she shot back, applying a pressure dressing to Kowalski's chest wound, a hot streak across her shoulder. The first bullet. It spun her halfway around, but she kept working. "It is nothing," she lied, keying her radio with her good hand. "Steel rain. This is forward observer. Fire mission grid. Danger close. 50 meters. Forward observer, you're not authorized." "Chief Resnik authorizes," she barked, a command voice emerging that surprised even herself. "American lives in imminent danger. Fire for effect." A pause. "Roger. Rounds out. 30 seconds. The ultimate sacrifice." The Taliban were massing for a push. The SEALs were down to their last magazines, wounded and exhausted. They were trapped in a killing box with no way out. "Chief," Kira said, her voice carrying a strange calm. "When artillery hits, we move through the breach in the east wall, 50 meters to the drainage ditch." "We can't move them," he protested, gesturing at the wounded. "I carry Rodriguez. You and Thompson take Kowalski. Trust me, I know this terrain." The first artillery rounds impacted with earth-shaking force. Kira was already moving, using her good arm to pull Rodriguez into a modified fireman's carry. The weight was staggering, but she had prepared for this, spending hours in the base gym. The second bullet caught her in the right thigh. She stumbled but kept moving. Pain shot up her leg with each step, but stopping meant death for all of them. The third bullet punched into her left side, just below her armor plate. She went down on one knee, but still held Rodriguez. "Leave him," Resnik shouted. "Gee, save yourself." "No one gets left," she forced out, pushing herself upright. The fourth bullet grazed her ribs as she tumbled into the drainage ditch, still clutching Rodriguez. She collapsed, her vision tunneling, her body screaming. "Jesus Christ, you're shot to hell!" Thompson slid down beside her, immediately applying pressure to her wounds. But Kira was already pulling out her advanced medical supplies. With her one good arm, she began packing her own wounds while giving instructions. "Rodriguez needs fluid resuscitation, 2 bags, saline wide open. Kowalski has tension pneumothorax, needs needle decompression." They worked with desperate efficiency as the Taliban closed in. The drainage ditch was a temporary refuge. Mortar rounds began dropping near them. No cover. No hope. Unless... Kira pulled out her radio. Her fingers were slick with blood. "Steel Rain, this is Forward Observer. Final, protective fire, grid. 45,913, danger close, 50 meters. Forward Observer, say again, that grid is your position." "Confirmed. Walking barrage, 3 rounds per gun. Continuous fire. Delay 5 minutes from my mark." Resnik stared at her. "That's suicide. You're calling artillery on our position." Kira switched to a different frequency. Her next words weren't in English. The Russian phrases flowed with practiced precision, fire commands in her native tongue using authentication codes from a military that wasn't supposed to be operating in this hemisphere. "Blackbird 27 authenticated," she replied in accented English. "Check your database. Moscow protocol still valid for emergency joint operations." "You're Russian?" Resnik asked, shocked. "Former Spetsnaz?" "Your military buried my record," she said with a bitter smile. "Former Russian Special Operations medic. Too much security risk for combat position. Made me supply Clerk instead." "Confirm danger. Close on your position," the radio crackled. "Confirmed. Airburst fusing, 20-meter altitude, maximum smoke and debris cloud." She looked at the SEALs. "When shells hit, we move. Southeast to landing zone." "We can't move through an artillery barrage," Thompson protested. "Artillery creates chaos, creates confusion. Taliban cannot shoot what they cannot see." She keyed the radio. "Mark! 5 minutes!" The steel rain. 30 seconds later, the first shells shrieked overhead. The world exploded. 155-millimeter shells detonated 20 meters above their position, creating a storm of steel fragments and overpressure. The airburst fusing was perfect, lethal to anyone standing but survivable for those pressed against the earth. Smoke and dust billowed out. turning day into twilight. "Move!" Kira shouted, hauling Rodriguez up. Through the smoke, she could see Taliban fighters reeling from the unexpected barrage. Some fled, others stood frozen. The continuous shells created a wall of chaos. Kira's legs shook with each step. Blood loss made her vision tunnel, but she focused on the growing sound of helicopter rotors. The Black Hawk materialized from the smoke like a mechanical angel. Hands reached out, pulling Rodriguez and Kowalski aboard. Kira pushed Thompson up before her strength finally failed. She collapsed at the helicopter's edge, half in and half out. Through her blurred vision, she saw Taliban fighters emerging from the smoke, rifles raised. This was it. Strong hands grabbed her tactical vest, hauling her inside as bullets sparked off the helicopter's armor. Resnik's face appeared above her, his mouth moving. The last thing she remembered was the crew chief's expression, the kind of look reserved for people who weren't expected to survive. Darkness took her as the Black Hawk lifted off, racing toward the trauma center at Kandahar Airfield. The aftermath. Kira awoke in a field hospital. General Morrison, a 3-star general, stood at the foot of her bed. Beside him, a civilian woman from the intelligence community. "Specialist Vulkov," Morrison said formally. Or should I say, Lieutenant Valentina Koslova, formerly of the 45th Guards Spetsnaz Brigade. The civilian woman stepped forward. "Your real service record from Moscow was illuminating. Decorated combat medic, expert marksman, 37 confirmed operations, until you killed your commanding officer and defected. He ordered us to execute civilians," Kira said quietly. "I refused. He tried to shoot me. I was faster." She explained how she defected, offering intelligence to the CIA in exchange for a new life, a new identity. Instead, they buried her in a supply depot, calling her a security risk. "I betray my country to stop massacre," she said, her voice filled with anger. "Risk everything for American values? And you make me count bullets while soldiers die?" Morrison and the intelligence woman exchanged glances. The door opened, and the SEALs entered. Resnik, in a wheelchair, Rodriguez on crutches, Thompson in a sling, and Kowalski walking slowly but under his own power. "She knew exactly where we'd be ambushed," Resnik told the general. "She predicted it down to the grid square." Kira, exhausted, closed her eyes. 3 years I studied Taliban operations from supply room. Every ambush, every attack, build predictive model. Sector 7 showed 73% probability. I report 11 times. No one listens. "You predicted our ambush?" Kowalski asked. "Predicted, warned, was ignored. You would not let me prevent. So I prepared a fix." She met their gazes. "Supply clerk who spends 4 hours daily in gym people think is vanity. Was preparation." The room fell silent. Morrison looked at the intelligence woman who nodded slightly. "Specialist Vulkov," the general said formally. "Your actions saved 4 American lives. You also violated direct orders and stole military equipment." "Yes," Kira replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Normally, that would result in a court-martial," Morrison continued. "However, given the circumstances and the results, you're being transferred to Special Operations Command. Your real qualifications will be recognized." "No more supply room?" she asked, quietly. "No more supply room." Resnik laughed. "General, she just carried 200 pounds of steel through a firefight with 4 bullets in her. I think she'll manage the training." Morrison turned to leave, then paused. "One question, Vulkov. Why risk everything for soldiers who dismissed you, who mocked you?" Kira was quiet for a long moment. In Spetsnaz, they teach that weakness is death. Feel nothing. Trust no one. Americans teach different. You fight for each other, die for each other. Not because ordered, but because you care. She shifted painfully. 3 years ago, I choose America because I believe in this. Today, I prove I belong. Not Russian defector, not supply clerk. American soldier who brings everyone home. Rodriguez stepped forward on his crutches. Vulkov, Kira, I'm sorry for how we treated you, for not listening. Is nothing. She waved him off. You are alive. That is all that matters. No, it's not nothing, Resnik interrupted. We judged you by your size, your accent, your job. Nearly got us killed because we were too proud to listen. That changes now. You've earned your place with the teams. Teams? Kira raised an eyebrow. I am not SEAL. No, Resnik smiled. You're something else. Something we didn't know we needed. The new instructor. 6 months later, newly promoted Sergeant Kira Vulkov stood before a class of special operations candidates. On her uniform, an American flag on the right shoulder, special operations insignia on the left. The scars from 4 bullet wounds were hidden, but the memory was forever etched in her mind. Today we discuss predictive analysis in combat operations, she began, her accent still noticeable but no longer hidden. First lesson, ego kills more soldiers than bullets. If someone tells you about danger, listen. It does not matter if they are supply clerk or general. A hand went up. Sergeant, is it true you carried 2 SEALs through an artillery barrage? Kira smiled. Stories grow in telling. Truth is simpler. I did job no one thought I could do because no one thought I should try. She looked at each student. Never underestimate soldier who thinks differently. Never dismiss warning because of who gives it. And never ever tell someone they do not belong. The class leaned forward, eager to learn from a woman who had proven that belonging wasn't about meeting expectations. It was about refusing to let others' limitations define your potential. The Pentagon had rewritten its policies because of her actions. But more importantly, soldiers lived because she had refused to accept that counting bullets was all she was good for. In the end, that was her greatest victory. Not the medals or the recognition. It was the knowledge that when Americans needed her most, she had been ready. 3 years of preparation for 47 minutes of hell worth every second. The supply clerk was gone. The Russian defector had become an American warrior. And somewhere in Afghanistan, Taliban fighters still told stories about the woman who called artillery on herself and lived. Kira Vulkov had found where she belonged. She had become the instructor, teaching others how to survive by proving that strength comes in unexpected packages with unexpected accents. This is a human triumph.